What's up YouTube, it's your boy Nash. Welcome back to the channel. Now you guys are probably wondering what's going on. Well, as you guys can tell by the title of the video, yes, I have a deck profile for you guys today. It is the last deck I would ever build in my career as a Yu-Gi-Oh player and a YouTube content creator. It is a Monarch deck, but this is no ordinary Monarch deck. This is a pure Monarch deck, because you guys know there have been several Monarch decks over the years that have had multiple packages, different package, decks depending on what you're building. But you're wondering, why am I doing a deck profile when I should be doing a WWE news video on Thursday? Well, unfortunately, there was nothing to talk about. The only two things that I was planning on talking about was the question of, could we see a faction for WWE official Adam Pearce and Walter potentially moving to the US? That was it. I looked up others and there was nothing. So as Triple H would say, there's always a plan B, and that plan B, a deck profile, which I love doing. I love doing deck profiles, especially when they're off of Nexus, which is the only way I can do deck profiles. And you guys know, I do post the decks on my Instagram quite often. I know that the last couple I didn't get the chance to. So I will attempt. Actually, I want to look them up. The last few decks I did the Dark Mission. Let's see, and I'm actually on my Fire Stick looking up the profiles. So let's see, Dark Mission, Galaxy Eyes. So within the last month, Blue Eyes, PK. I think I did Nordic. I think I did post the Nordic deck. I'll have to look on my Instagram. But yeah. So yeah. I never would have guessed that I would be doing a Monarch deck. Okay, so I did do Galaxy. I did post Galaxy Eyes. I did post the Phantom Knight deck. Okay. Utopia I did do. Crystal Beast. Okay, so Blue Eyes I did not do. Crystal Beast I did not do. So, alright, so Blue Eyes, Crystal Beast, and did I do the Shark one? I don't think I did do the Shark one, but I will be doing a update on a Shark deck, just so you guys know. But anyway, I'm going off track. What's cool about the Monarch deck is the fact that the Monarchs, they were released all the way back in 2005, right around the time of what was it? I think Ancient Sanctuary, if I remember correctly. And then over time, we ended up getting more and more Monarchs. We ended up getting Zayborg and Mobius, Ryza. Over time, we ended up getting Caius, Karaz, and then we ended up getting the Mega Monarchs over time. And then when we got the Monarch structure deck, we ended up getting Ether and Erebus, as well as their squires, so to speak. So I'm actually excited for this one. The side deck is pretty much what you would typically see going up against going up against pretty much every other deck in the format at this point. But without any further ado, I'm gonna go straight into the deck. So hopefully you guys enjoy. If you guys do enjoy the deck profile, if you guys enjoyed the deck profile, I can't speak, and you guys want to see more in the future, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and smash that thumbs up button, and be sure to follow me on my socials. Links are in the description. And if you guys have family you want to send me My address will be in the description. Anyway, let's get straight into it. First up, we have 3 copies of Erebus, the Underworld Monarch. This is probably one of the top 3 boss monsters that you're probably going to be summoning in this deck. The effect now, and not only does, and then not what is up with me today? This morning, my mind has gone numb this morning. Anyway, so we have 3 Erebus and 3 Ether. Each of these 2 has similar effects, if you will. Erebus' effect says you contribute summon this card by tributing a tribute summon monster. If this card is tribute summoned, you can send 2 Monarch spell or traps with different names from your hand or deck to the grave. And if you do, shuffle a card from your opponent's hand at random. Shuffle 1 card from your opponent's hand at random, graveyard or side of the field, back into the deck. Once per turn, during either player's turn, if this card is in your grave, you can discard a spell or trap, then target a monster in your grave with 2,400 or more attack and 1,000 defense added to your hand. Erebus, now Ether has the effect where it says, where if it's tribute summon, you can send 2 spell or traps from your hand or deck to the grave, and if you do, spell summon a monster with 2,400 or more attack and 1,000 defense from your deck, but return it to the hand during the end phase. And the other effect of Ether says during your opponent's main phase, if this card is in your hand, you can banish a Monarch spell trap from your grave, and immediately after this effect resolves, tribute summon this card, which is a quick effect. So basically, with these 2, Erebus focuses on popping cards from your opponent's hand, graveyard, or field back into the deck, which is not too bad. Of an effect, but you're mainly going to be going after the hand because you want to have that much card advantage over your opponent. Ether basically just summons. It basically allows you to Cyber Dragon a monster, and you're pretty much just golden, which is really cool. And the best part is that they're both 2,800 attack, 1,000 defense, and with Ether you can actually summon Erebus right off the bat and potentially attack for game depending on your opponent's life points, which is pretty cool. Now we actually have something very unique. So I am running 2 Mega Monarchs. The first one I'm running is the 1 copy of Karaz the Mega Monarch. If you guys have never seen this card before, it is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. It's an 8-star Dark Fiend with 2,000 attack and 1,000 defense, and it says you contribute summon this card and it says you contribute summon this card by tributing 1 tribute summon monster. If this card is tribute summoned, target 1 card in the field, banish it, and if you do inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent, then if it's a dark monster, banish all cards with that name from the hand, main deck, extra deck, and graveyard to the player who controlled it. If this card was tribute summoned by tributing a dark monster, add this additional effect. You can target 2 cards instead. So basically, if you were to tribute, say a card like Vanity's Fiend, which I'm actually running in the deck to summon Karaz, you're able to target 2 cards on your opponent's field and banish them. So it's basically removal. It could be like a bottomless trap hole or whatever, which is really cool. Or it could be a double cosmic cyclone, or you can mix and match, which is really cool, which is really good. And again, it's a 2,800 beat stick on board, so you can't go wrong with that. Next up, we have the 1 copy of Zayborg, the Mega Monarch, and you're probably wondering, why this card? This card isn't good. You're wrong. It is actually pretty good. The effect is really good. It says, the effect reads, you can tribute summon this card by tributing 1 tribute summon monster. If this card is tribute summoned, target a monster on the field, destroy it, And if it was a light monster, both players send as many cards as possible from their extra deck to the grave, but no more than the original level or rank of the destroyed monster. If this card was tribute summoned by tributing a light monster, add this additional effect, you choose the cards your opponent sends to the grave. So, because that you're not running an extra deck, which most Monarch decks usually don't, run cards in the extra deck, you're gonna be able to just ensure that you win. This card just ensures that your opponent has no cards on their field. It ensures that your opponent has nothing, basically, which is really good. But funny enough, you can actually tribute a card like, say, Majesty's Fiend, or this next card that I'm going to bring up, to summon Zayborg, and you're pretty much just off to the races there. What is that other card I'm talking about? The card that I mentioned earlier in the video, Karaz, the Light Monarch. It's a 6-star Light Warrior, 2400 attack, 1000 defense, and the effect reads, when this card is normal or special summon, you can target up to 2 cards on the field, destroy those targets, and if you do, each player can draw 1 card for each of the cards they controlled that was destroyed by this effect. This card cannot attack during the turn, it is normal or special summon. So, I know that the effect might sound confusing, so I'll try to summarize it as best I can. Once you normal or special summon this card, you're able to target you're able to pop 2 cards on the field, and each player will be able to draw a card for each card that they owned that was destroyed by this effect. So basically if you were to pop 2 of your cards, you would be able to draw 2 cards. But if you pop 2 cards on your opponent's field, they get 2 cards. But if you decide to do mix and match, 1 on each side, both you and your opponent would be able to draw only 1 card. So you're most likely going to want to target both of your cards, so you can gain that card advantage over your opponent. Next up, as I mentioned, we have the Vanity's Fiend and the Majesty's Fiend. These 2 are just absolutely nuts. Basically with Vanity's Fiend, it prevents both you and your opponent from special summoning monsters. Majesty's Fiend prevents you and your opponent from activating monster effects, which is actually pretty good if you're able to establish a board where you can have Erebus, Ether, Caius or Zayborg, depending on which one you want, and let's say Majesty's Fiend and Vanity's Fiend together. If you're able to establish a board like that, you're pretty much just golden. Your opponent essentially cannot play any form of Yu-Gi-Oh, which is just absolutely insane. Next up, I'm actually running 2 copies of a card that might be a little sus, but it actually works, funny enough. It is known as Proof of Proofless. And if you guys are wondering why, this is actually one of the newer cards that was released within the last couple years now. And the effect reads, if you control no special summon monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. Also, you cannot special summon monsters. You cannot special summon other monsters for the rest of this turn. You can only use this effect once per turn. If this card is normal special summon, immediately after this effect resolves, tribute summon one monster. So what's funny? So what's cool about this is that if you don't have any monsters, so let's say for example you have no monsters on the field and you're going first. You have this in your opening hand. You supposed to summon this, trigger the effect, go and you can easily tribute summon it. You can easily tribute it, go into a card like say Vanity's Fiend, and your opponent cannot special summon monsters. It's an old card that was released from way back in the day. but the card is just so good. I believe it was what, Cyber Dark Impact. I believe it was released. But yeah, this card is good. You're able to go into Vanity's Fiend, which then, if you want, you could actually go into Kai's the Mega Monarch, and you're essentially just off to the races there. And then to round out the monsters, we have 3 copies of Eidos the Underworld Squire, and 3 copies of Ida the Heavenly Squire. Eidos has the effect where it reads, if this card is normal or special summon during your main phase this turn, you can distribute summon a monster in addition to your normal summoner set. You can only gain this effect once per turn. You can banish this card from your grave, then target a monster with 800 attack and 1000 defense in your grave, except this card, special summon in defense. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. You can only use this effect once per turn. Ida has a different effect where it says, if this card is normal special summon, you can special summon a monster with 800 attack and 1000 defense from your deck in defense position, except this card, and you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one of your banished Monarch spell or traps, add it to your hand. You want to use each effect once per turn. So basically, if you were to normal summon, if you were to normal summon Eidos, you can summon Ida. You can special summon Ida, activate her effect, and then summon out another Eidos. It's basically a unique chain of events where you're able to where you're able to basically add your banished spell traps back into your hand and special summon from your graveyard, which is just absolutely nuts. Which again, you can actually use Ida to summon Vanity's Fiend, or Majesty's Fiend, or Karaz the Light Monarch, and then you would be able to go into Zayborg or into Ether if you wanted to, and then Eidos could go into Vanity's Fiend, which could then help you go into Kai's the Mega Monarch, or even Erebus the Underworld Monarch, which is just absolutely nuts. This deck just works. It took me months to get this deck right, and this is the best way to do it in my personal opinion. There are other cards that you can use as far as like the spells and traps, but as far as like the Mega Monarchs and the 2400 Beat Stick Monarchs, there are others you can use like Zayborg, like such as Zayborg, where basically if it's tribute summon, you can pop a card on the field, but you mainly want to use Zayborg the Mega Monarch because you want to try and maximize having that card advantage over your opponent. So, but with that being said, moving on into the spells. First up, for the 1-ofs, we have the 1-for-1. With this card, basically you can send a card like say the Prime Monarch to the grave, special summon Ida, trigger her effect to go into Eidos. Yeah, into Eidos. And then you're able to just go off to the races there, which is pretty cool. Reinforcement of the army, basically allowing you to go to add Ida to the hand. Perhaps even also Karaz if you wanted to. So it's not too bad. I am thinking about cutting this out, just because with this deck, you're pretty much able to have Ida in your hand. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take out Ida, not Ida. I'm gonna take out the Rhoda, and I'm actually going to add a Solemn Warning, just because just because of the fact that you really want to try and maximize ensuring your opponent doesn't do anything stupid. So I did cut out the Rhoda. I do apologize, but I know some people are gonna comment saying, "Oh, Rhoda's really good in this deck." Yes, it is true, but there's only a few targets, and there's really no point. There's really no point because you're pretty much, because that you have 3 copies of Ida and 3 copies of Idos, you're easily going to be able to have both on the field right off the bat. So there's no point. But with that being said, we do have the Foolish Burial, mainly because of the fact that you want to try and send one of your squires to the graveyard so you can trigger off their effects. You can even also send Erebus and Ether if you want it to the graveyard if you want, with Foolish Burial, which is pretty cool. Now for the Monarch spells and traps. So first up we have Pantheism of the Monarchs. This card is just absolutely busted. I have no fucking clue why they brought this back to 3, but it's basically your pot of greed, so to speak. So the effect reads, send 1 Monarch spell or trap from your hand to the grave, draw 2 cards. You can manage the card from your grave, reveal 3 Monarch spells or traps from your deck. Your opponent chooses 1 to add to your hand, and you shuffle the rest back into your deck. So basically, it's a pot of greed, pot of duality. It's just that good. It's just that broken. It's basically pot of greed, it's basically pot of greed -1, and then it's a pot of duality, which is just nuts. So basically, you're adding 3 cards from your deck to your hand, which is just broken. It's just absolutely broken. Absolutely broken. Next up, we have 3 copies of Tenacity of the Monarchs. This card is really cool because the effect reads, reveal 1 monster in your hand with 2400 attack and 1000 defense, or 2800 attack and 1000 defense. Add 1 Monarch spell or trap from your deck to your hand except this card, and you're going to activate 1 per turn. This card is basically spell and trap Rhoda. You really cannot go wrong with this. So when you activate this, you're mainly going to want to go after Monarch Stormforth to tribute one of your opponent's, like say Dark Monsters, go into Vanity's Fiend, and you're just pretty much off to the races there, which is really cool. Next up, we have Frost Blast of the Monarchs. This card is just absolutely insane. 2 copies of Frost Blast of the Monarchs. This card is really cool. The effect reads, if you control a monster with 2400 attack and 1000 defense, target 1 set card on the field, destroy it. You can manage the card and add 1 Monarch spell or trap from your grave. Okay, never mind. You can banish this card and 1 Monarch and 1 Monarch spell or trap from your grave. Then target a set card on the field, destroy it. So basically, it's a Twin Twister, so to speak, which is really cool. So definitely maximize using this card. But I'm only choosing to run 2 because of the fact that I've got the Harpy's Feather Duster in the side. Plus, I also got several other cards to stop back row dead in their tracks. So yeah. That being said, next up we have 2 copies of Strike of the Monarchs. This is actually not too shabby of a card. The effect reads, you contribute 1 face up level 5 or higher normal summon or set monster, then target 1 face-up card in the field, negate its effects, then draw 1 card. The effect remains negated until the end of the turn. During your main phase, if this card is in your grave, you can banish this card, then declare 1 attribute. All face-up monsters currently in the field become that attribute until the end of the turn. So what's cool about this is that it acts as a infinite impermanence mixed in with DNA transplant. So what I mean by DNA transplant is the fact that you get to target 1 attribute all monsters become that attribute, which would then fit perfectly which would combo perfectly with tenacity of the Monarchs, where you're able to add Monarch Stormforth, and you contribute one of your opponents, like say Dark Monsters, go into Vanity's Fiend, or go into Vanity's Fiend, which would then help you go into Karaz. Karaz the Mega Monarch, and you're pretty much off to the races there. This card is absolutely nuts. And then, of course, the aforementioned Monarch Stormforth. This card basically just allows you to... This basically change of heart, so to speak, or I guess soul exchange would probably be the more better term, which is really cool. The only problem, the only downside, is that you're not allowed to special summon monsters from the extra deck. But the cool thing is that this deck doesn't run extra deck monsters, so you're pretty much just off to the races from there. Next up, we have the one copy of March of the Monarchs, which is really cool. The effect reads: Tribute summon the monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. Also, neither player can target them with card effects. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. So basically, this basically acts as a protection card for all of your monsters that were tribute summoned. So what this means is cards like Evenly Match, Imperm, none of those cards like those cannot target any of your Monarchs, any of your tribute summon monsters with card effects. So Erebus, Ether, Caius, Zayborg, Karaz, and the Fiends cannot be targeted with card effects, and they can't be destroyed by card effects, which is really cool. The only downside is that they can be destroyed by battle, which is the only downside, but still pretty cool. Still, it's a pretty cool card. Next up, we have 2 copies of Return of the Monarchs, which is just absolutely nuts. The effect reads: You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. When you tribute summon a monster, you can activate one of these effects. Add from your deck to your hand a monster with 2400 attack and 1000 defense with a different name for that tribute summon monster. Add from your deck to your hand a monster with 2800 attack and 1000 defense with a different name for that tribute summon monster. The tribute summon monster must be face up with the field to activate and resolve this effect. You can only use this effect once per turn. So basically, it acts as another form of Rhoda, so to speak, which is really good. And then to round out the spells, we have 3 copies of Domain of the True Monarchs. This is basically this is your field spell. This is the field spell where its effect is just nuts. The effect reads: While you have no cards in your extra deck, and you are the only player that controls a tribute summon monster, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. If a tribute summon monster you control attacks an opponent's monster, it gains 800 attack during damage cal only. Once per turn, you can reduce the level of a monster with 2800 attack and 1000 defense in your hand by 2 until the end of the turn, even after they're summoned or set, and even if this card leaves the field. That is absolutely nuts. So not only does this lock your... So not only is this a Buster lock, where it locks your opponent out of summoning monsters from the extra deck, but it's attack gain, and it's also a it's also a cost down. And what I mean by cost down is, with cost down's effect, it says discard 1 card for the rest of this turn. Reduce all the levels of all monsters in your hand by 2, even after they are summoned. So what's cool is that it's basically cost down, but you don't have to discard any cards from your hand, which is absolutely nuts. And then moving on into the traps, there are only 5 of them. First up, we have the Monarchs Erupts. This card is just absolutely broken. It's just that good. The effect reads: it says activate this card only if you have no cards in your extra deck and you control a tribute summon monster. Negate the effects of all face-up monsters on the field while those monsters are face-up on the field, except tribute summon monsters. During your end phase, if you control a tribute summon monster, if you control no tribute summon monsters, send this card to the grave. So this card basically acts as another form of imperm, which is just absolutely nuts, absolutely incredible. And then of course we have 3 copies of the Prime Monarch. This is basically your trap monster, so to speak. So the trap effect reads: once per turn, you can target 2 Monarch spells or traps in your grave, shuffle them into the deck, then draw 1 card. Which is just absolutely busted. So it's basically a much more unique version of I'm trying to think. Pot of Avarice. It's basically a unique version of Pot of Avarice, but you're not drawing 2 cards. You're only drawing 1, which is pretty crazy. Now the monster effect says if this card is in your grave, you can banish 1 other Monarch spell trap from your grave. Special summon this card in defense as a normal monster. 5-star light fairy, 1,000 attack, 2,400 defense. This card is not treated as a trap. You can only use this effect once per turn. Basically, you're able to use this to go into Karaz, which will then help you go into Zayborg, and then help you go into Ether if you need it. And then, of course, Solemn Warning, because, well, you want your opponent to not have anything on board. Moving on into the side deck. The side deck is just pretty much like, basically cards that you would normally see in typical side decks, potentially main decks, depending on how you see it. First up, we have the 2. So for the monsters, we have the 2 Ash Blossom, 2 Ghost Ogre, and the 2 Ghost Spell. As I said before, Ash Blossom focuses on summoning monsters from the deck, adding cards from the deck to the hand, sending cards from the deck to the grave. Ghost Bell focuses on adding cards from the graveyard back into the hand, back into the deck, potentially back into the extra deck, summoning monsters from the grave, and banishing cards from the grave. So these 2 together, absolutely nuts, absolutely broken. And the Ghost Ogre focuses on the back row that are already face up on the field when they activate their effects. The spells, there are only 3, which are Harpy's Feather Duster, Monster Reborn, Called by the Grave. Monster Reborn is here as a way to bring back, as a way to bring back Karaz, or potentially also, I would say potentially Vanity's Fiend or Majesty's Fiend, but Monster Reborn is a special summon, so yeah. So it's a way to bring back Karaz, or potentially even also Ida can help you go into Karaz, or even Majesty's Fiend. And then Called by the Grave, you want your place to go through, so you gotta have it. Moving on into the traps, we have two Imperm, which it's Imperm, you cannot go wrong with Imperm. 2 copies of Zing Zang Hu. This card is not back row removal, but it's a floodgate. The effect reads: activate by selecting 2 set spell traps on the field. The selected spell traps cannot be activated. So you want to try and maximize targeting your opponent's back row, and not your own. If you target your own, you're pretty much just fucked. And then last but not least, the other. Guys, I'm sorry. Somebody's working out there. Just, you know what? Disregard that. And disregard that. Anyway, again, going off track. Last but not least, the other 2 copies of Solemn Warning, in case if you want to maximize saying no to your opponent. So, guys, that's gonna do it for this video. I'm actually curious. What are you guys' thoughts on this deck? Is there any cards that you guys think I should take out, put in? Let me know in the comments below. And that is going to do it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you guys Smash that thumbs up button if you guys are new to the channel. You guys want more deck profiles in the future. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you guys don't miss out on any new content that comes your way. And be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. All the links will be in the description below. And if you guys have any fan mail that you want to send me and want me to open up on the channel, my address will also be in the description as well. And on that, this is your boy Nash, signing out.